Some dare call it conspiracy.
Hello Initiates, we've got a Some Dare Call It Conspiracy extra portion for you here. This is a blog that I did quite a while ago, and it's a bit of an interesting one because at the time I was still dangling my feet in the conspiracy world quite heavily. But at the time, the EU was considered to be the worst thing on the planet. It was the stepping stone to the New World Order. It was tyrannical. They were imposing all sorts of laws on us and making our lives particularly hellish. And so I discovered that that wasn't really true. And so the weird thing about this blog is it's me trying to sort of pander to the conspiracy crowd whilst actually finding stuff out about the conspiracy crowd that isn't true. It also includes mind control, manipulation programs, media manipulation, think tanks, the oil industry, stolen elections, and all that stuff that should appeal to the conspiracy crowd, but in this case didn't at all because it doesn't go along with their preconceived narrative. This is the story of Cambridge Analytica, a real conspiracy that was completely ignored by the conspiracy crowd.
Cambridge Analytica Part 2, and this was first published on Wednesday the 22nd of August 2018. SCL, the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, carries a secret clearance as a List X contractor for the MOD. A List X site is a commercial site on British soil that is approved to hold government information marked as confidential and above. Essentially, SCL got the green light to hold British government secrets on its premises. Former Cambridge Analytica employee Brittany Kaiser also told the committee she had seen documents in which Nigel Oakes, the co-founder of the SCL group and the head of its defence division, revealed the company's audience targeting methodology was for several years export controlled by the British government. That would mean that the methodology was considered a weapon, she said. Weapons-grade communication tactics, which means we had to tell the British government if it was going to be deployed in another country outside the United Kingdom. Hello, here's the second part of the blog I'm writing. This will give you some of the background to what Cambridge Analytica do and who they are owned by. Hopefully, this will give an insight as to why this is extremely troubling when you realise who is behind this company. Also, I hope this will allow you to fill in some of the gaps from the previous blog. The next part of the blog will discuss the already existing internet manipulation programs that are remarkably similar to the tactics of Cambridge Analytica. I do appreciate this is a long blog, but it is a complicated subject, and the most interesting stuff is at the end. I'm sorry. SCL. Nigel Oakes is the Chief Executive Officer of Strategic Communication Laboratories, SCL. They are the leading supplier of strategic communications information operations and public diplomacy to governments and military clients around the world. Educated at Eton, former lover of a minor royal, high flyer, and recently rumoured to be an operative for MI5, Oakes utilised his knowledge of psychological manipulation and combined that with data mining to create a series of companies with an incredibly effective record in behavioural change and influencing elections across the globe. In 1991, Oakes, who had previously worked in TV production and for the advertising agency Saatchi & Saatchi, founded the Behavioural Dynamics Institute, or the BDI, as a research facility for strategic communication, which means either communicating a concept, a process, or data that satisfies a long-term strategic goal of an organization. This is also known as propaganda. BDI promised competitive advantage to clients through the understanding, modification, and control of human behavior. In 1993, Oakes formed Strategic Communication Laboratories, or SCL, believing that by utilizing the research conducted at BDI, he could shift mass opinion far more successfully than simply by using traditional advertising methods. After achieving financial success in the commercial arena, SCL expanded into the far more lucrative setting of military and political clientele. The company became known for alleged involvement in military disinformation campaigns to social media branding and voter targeting. According to its website, SCL has participated in over 25 international political and electoral campaigns since 1994, tasked with manipulating the populations to ensure that their clients get their desired results. SCL's tactics have been used by various different clients from a variety of different militaries, political parties, and wealthy donors to study and manipulate public opinion and political will. The company's involvement in the political world has mostly been in the developing world, where it has been used by wealthy clients or Western governments to influence populations, maneuver beliefs, and in this way, stage manage the electoral process. More recently, their methodology has been applied to the UK and the USA. Specifically, the company used what have been called psyops to provide insight into the thinking of the target audience. This data can then be used to manipulate large swathes of people as the overall agenda requires, usually to paralyze them with fear or to whip them into a frenzy of rage. SCL has proudly claimed to be able to help foment coups given enough time and resources. According to its website, SCL has influenced elections in Italy, Latvia, the Ukraine, Albania, Romania, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Mauritius, India, Indonesia, Thailand, Taiwan, Colombia, Antigua, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Trinidad and Tobago. The SCL Group has brazenly referred to itself as a global election management agency. Politico magazine has previously reported that the company was known for involvement in military disinformation campaigns, social media branding, and voter targeting. Furthermore, SCL claims that its methodology has been approved or endorsed by agencies of the governments of the United Kingdom and the federal government of the United States, amongst others. Cambridge Analytica. In 2013, with a massive cash injection from right-wing billionaire Robert Mercer and right-wing multimillionaire Steve Bannon, SCL formed Cambridge Analytica as an offshoot company that would work on election campaigns closer to home. The firm maintained offices in London, New York City, and Washington, D.C. Cambridge Analytica holds the slogan, "Data-driven behavior change," which is terrifying. Cambridge Analytica CEO Alexander Nix has said the company was involved in 44 US political races in 2014. In 2015, it performed data analysis service for Ted Cruz's presidential campaign. And in 2016, Cambridge Analytica worked for Donald Trump's presidential campaign after shifting away from Ted Cruz, as well as for Leave.eu. The types of political services that Cambridge Analytica were prepared to offer were uncovered by Channel 4 News in November of 2017. An undercover reporter from the outlet posed as a potential customer for Cambridge Analytica, hoping to help Sri Lankan candidates get elected, and was offered some very dodgy services to ensure the success of his campaign. This was all secretly filmed by the reporter. Alexander Nix was recorded in this investigation talking unguardedly about the company's practices. Nix said that the company uses honey traps, bribery stings, and prostitutes, all for opposition research. As an example of how far the company would go, Nix offered to discredit political opponents in Sri Lanka with suggestive videos using beautiful Ukrainian girls and offers of bribes, even if the opponents did not accept the offers. From the footage, Cambridge Analytica executives say they had already worked on over 200 elections across the world, presumably altering the results for their clients with similar tactics. Previous campaigns. In one portion of the recording, Mark Turnbull, a managing director for Cambridge Analytica and its sister company SCL Elections, told Channel 4's undercover investigative reporting team that his firm secretly stage-managed Kenyatta's hotly contested campaigns to run the East African nation of Kenya. "We have rebranded the entire party twice, written the manifesto, done research, analysis, messaging. I think we wrote all the speeches and we staged the whole thing, so just about every element of this candidate." Turnbull was referring specifically to the firm's work for Kenyatta's political party, known as the National Alliance until 2016 and subsequently as the Jubilee Party. Cambridge Analytica also admitted to having a hand in recent and past elections in Nigeria, having been hired by a rich Nigerian who supported the incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan. It was the kind of campaign that was our bread and butter, says one ex-employee of Cambridge Analytica. We're employed by a billionaire who's panicking at the idea of a change of government and who wants to spend big to make sure that doesn't happen. This was a repeat of what SCL had done around the world for 30 years, weaponizing information to harm an opponent and promote the desired outcome for their clients. This type of campaign has been defined by the US military as information operations or psychological warfare. Speaking to the Observer newspaper, an ex-employee of the company explained why they were brought in at the last minute. There were a lot of scared millionaires, worried that Buhari would get in. It was all very last minute. A team flew out to Abuja and put together a communications campaign. It was a straightforward, normal comms campaign in most respects. The Observer newspaper received part of their propaganda campaign, a video designed to smear their political opponents as proponents of Sharia law and Islamic terror. It was set out like a trailer to a horror movie. The film was designed to make people fear the inevitable rise of Islamic terror if they did not vote in the correct fashion. Coming to Nigeria on February 15th, 2015, the voiceover says in the manner of a trailer for a Hollywood movie. Dark, scary, and very uncertain. Sharia for all. And then it poses the question, what would Nigeria look like if Sharia were imposed by Buhari? The video then shows a montage of atrocities, presumably similar to the types of things that might happen if this warning is not sufficiently heeded. There are scenes of people being macheted to death, their legs hacked off, their skulls caved in. A former contractor said, it was voter suppression of the most crude and basic kind. It was targeted at Buhari voters in Buhari regions to basically scare the shit out of them and stop them from voting. The film warns, if Buhari wins, women would wear the veil. Sharia law would be introduced. The inference from the images on screen is that if you resist, you may well be macheted to death. The employee revealed that, despite having the appearance of a private company, there were representatives from various intelligence agencies there, and they were there to consult with Cambridge Analytica. There was a 2-hour meeting that took place in the hotel lobby between 2 senior campaign members and Israeli intelligence, after which they swept our hotel rooms for listening devices and said they would switch out all our phones. The story we were told was that there were intelligence agents from a number of different countries, including Israel and France, who were supporting Goodluck Jonathan and helping the campaigns. There is no suggestion that Jonathan was aware of this or implicated in this support. Another employee said, basically, the Israelis didn't want Buhari to win. SCL was successful in the 2007 election, but only joined the later campaign in its final stages. And although they were able to sway huge amounts of votes, they did not have enough time to be successful. Embarrassingly, their fears of Islamic-driven mass machete attacks were apparently unfounded. So, a bit of a recap. SCL is a PSYOPs company based in Britain that has connections to the British military and intelligence agencies. SCL has board members from Marconi Defence Systems and British military psychological operations and ex-commanding officers from the US Marines. Technically, it is a domestic firm, but it has many links to the military and uses military PSYOPs tactics in order to manipulate the results of elections by directing behavioural change in the population. Robert Mercer and Steve Bannon bought into SCL, and together they created Cambridge Analytica, a firm that specialises in data mining and targeting campaign material, propaganda, at specific audiences in a manner specifically catered for the most impact within their target group. Aggregate IQ is another data mining company based in Canada. Though it publicly denies it, it is a shell company of Cambridge Analytica. Robert Mercer owns the IP address and the web details of this company. SCL, the PSYOPs firm with links to British military intelligence, used to advertise Aggregate IQ as their Canadian branch, but removed this link from their website just prior to Brexit. Cambridge Analytica employees stated in the press that Aggregate IQ built all our software and they hold all our databases. During the run-up to Brexit, Vote Leave, Leave.eu, and various other pro-Brexit campaigns gave a huge amount of money to this foreign company for reasons that have not been adequately explained. Because they are foreign, Aggregate IQ cannot be investigated in the same way as domestic firms helping political campaigns in regards to overspending, fraud, or illegal data mining. During the run-up to Brexit, Aggregate IQ was paid to micro-target potential voters via propaganda campaigns on Facebook and other social media. Micro-targeting is individualized political messages delivered in the most effective manner to cause the most extreme responses. This was done in the most effective manner by stealing millions of data points from social media platforms. So essentially, Cambridge Analytica, SCL, used psyops on the public in order to influence their political belief and to drive their voting patterns. Part of this tactic was to denote which news outlets are trustworthy and which simply disseminate fake news. This directed people to Breitbart and other Mercer-owned or influenced outlets who bathed their readership in sensational but inaccurate stories that just piqued their rage. But don't take my word for it. Cambridge Analytica SCL admitted to using your Facebook and social media data to target what they think will be an effective propaganda message targeted directly to you. This is done by analyzing your web history, following conversations, and taking data from the post you like or revisit. An employee stated, the goal is to capture every single aspect of every voter's information environment. They also used the tactic of spreading propaganda in the form of plausible lies. By applying their research, they can determine which lies you are most likely to fall for and to get angry about. This relied on a network of seemingly organic media personalities which on closer inspection were financed by the very same elites. Andy Wigmore of Leave.eu said recently, the propaganda machine of the Nazis, for instance, you take away all the hideous horror and that kind of stuff. It was very clever the way they managed to do what they did. In its pure marketing sense, you can see the logic of what they were saying, why they were saying it, and how they presented things, and the imagery. And looking at that now, in hindsight, having been on the sharp end of this campaign, you think, crikey, this is not new, and it's just using the tools that you have at the time. So yup, that's Andy Wigmore there of Leave.eu defending the tactics of Cambridge Analytica by saying, yeah, but the Nazis did it too. He's a class act. Nigel Oakes was even more candid in his admissions, freely explaining that the campaign of Donald Trump leveraged an artificial enemy in the shape of Muslims in the same way that Adolf Hitler played on pre-war German hatred for Jews. Despite previous admissions, Wigmore now denies using Cambridge Analytica, but said, Cambridge Analytica did no work for Leave.eu after it failed in its bid to be named lead Brexit campaigner. But he said that Leave.eu copied Cambridge Analytica's methods for pinpointing groups believed to be susceptible to specific messages. And he suggested that actuaries from Aaron Banks' Eldon Insurance used probability calculations to identify areas where Nigel Farage should campaign, which seems totally legit. He also said, the more outrageous we are, the more attention we'll get, and the more attention we get, the more outrageous we'll be. So he isn't the most reliable of sources. Basically, the tactics are to stoke and provoke anger in their targeted audience via fear, perhaps with disproportionate stories about immigrants and crime, or Muslims and crime, or the very worst, Muslim immigrants committing crime. And this is done via micro-targeting on social media, which may be why Facebook is so reactionary and hateful, because people are being manipulated. Familiar tactics. In America, Cambridge Analytica used a company called Secure America Now, likely a shell organization, to spread fear of Islam across the country via YouTube videos and social media memes and adverts. Several of these videos were spread via Gatestone Media and via Mercer-sponsored media outlets. Cambridge Analytica consulted Rudolph Giuliani's law firm to examine the legal loopholes to applying these tactics in the election. One of the advertisements, which was shown to voters in swing states that included Nevada and North Carolina, showed France and Germany as if run under sensationalized versions of Sharia law. It showed French schoolchildren being trained to fight for ISIS and the Mona Lisa painting covered in a burqa. It also showed an image of the Eiffel Tower with a Muslim star and crescent. Under Sharia law, you can enjoy everything the Islamic State of France has to offer as long as you follow the rules, said the narrator of one of those adverts, which appeared as if it was a travel promotion. Professor Emma Bryant of Essex University has been studying the actions of Cambridge Analytica and is incredibly critical of their tactics. Using Cambridge Analytica's media strategy, Trump's false racist and Islamophobic comments, resentment and fear were deployed where they would be most effective, mobilizing swing state audiences, using voters' personal data to monitor them, and using psychological profiling to manipulate their emotional responses en masse, Bryant wrote. Her colleague Damien Collins said, "Data analytics was used to target voters who were concerned about this issue and to frighten them with messaging designed to create an artificial enemy for them to fight against." And this was all achievable due to the huge amounts of data that was compiled by the company. Alexander Nix, the CEO of Cambridge Analytica, boasted in 2016, "Today in the USA, we have somewhere close to 4,000 or 5,000 data points on every individual. So we modeled the personalities of every adult across the USA, some 230 million people." This information was used to develop the most effective manipulation campaigns that would speak directly to the concerns of the voters. We were testing all kinds of messages and all kinds of imagery, which included images of walls, people scaling walls. Christopher Wiley, a former employee at Cambridge Analytica, told CNN, "We tested drain the swamp, ideas of the deep state and the NSA watching you, and the government conspiring against you." And a lot of these narratives, which at the time would have seemed crazy for a mainstream candidate to run on, those were the things that we were finding, that there were these pockets of Americans who this really appealed to. The phrase deep state was tested by psychographics firm Cambridge Analytica on Facebook users to gauge their reaction without their knowledge or consent. This was mostly done via the use of seemingly innocuous quizzes and surveys. In fact, Cambridge Analytica was testing out slogans like "drain the swamp," "deep state," and "build the wall" as early as 2014. These were not ideas from Trump or even the Republican Party. They were advertising slogans developed by a psychological warfare company. These slogans were chosen before the candidate was even chosen. The suggestion is that Cambridge Analytica did this via aggregate IQ during Brexit, so it could not be investigated properly, and in the open during the Trump campaign. In fact, the Trump campaign was actually doing pretty bad, which is why the DNC promoted him. This was revealed in the WikiLeaks, until Mercer bought his billions to the party. Aggregate IQ is out of UK jurisdiction, so cannot be investigated. But Aggregate IQ has worked with Cambridge Analytica and SCL ever since they merged. Another recap. So this company, owned by elite billionaires with connections to British military psychological operations, US military, the Pentagon, and other social media and security firms with links to the CIA, was instrumental in securing the Brexit vote and in getting Trump elected as president. Nigel Farage, Robert Mercer, and Steve Bannon have been friends and colleagues since at least 2012. Breitbart's London office was opened to support UKIP, according to Steve Bannon. Bannon and Mercer have a very right-wing ideology and believe that Brexit was vital for kickstarting a similar revolution in the USA. Brexit was seen as symbolically important to the Trump campaign. Both were sold on lies, and both positioned themselves as anti-establishment and for the people, when this is clearly not the case. Recently, the DUP were found to have paid huge amounts of money to Aggregate IQ. They are now forming a coalition government with the Conservatives. It gets worse, so much worse. Although officially Cambridge Analytica has nothing to do with the Brexit campaign, if you ignore the connections via Aggregate IQ, they repeatedly stated in the press that they were involved. Then someone pointed out that this was illegal, and as it hadn't been officially declared, they just began to deny it. In a 2015 PR week, Cambridge Analytica Director of Programme Development Brittany Kaiser stated, Cambridge Analytica only started working with Leave.eu more recently. The firm's teams of data scientists and analysts would be enabling targeted messaging by understanding why certain things worry people. Also, in 2015, Leave.eu confirmed that Cambridge Analytica were helping them map the British electorate. Andy Wigmore, the Leave.eu communications director, told The Observer that Mercer had directed Cambridge Analytica to help the Leave campaign. Wigmore also worked in a capacity with Aaron Banks, a major financier of UKIP. Andy Wigmore explained, a Facebook like was their most potent weapon because using artificial intelligence, as we did, tells you all sorts of things about that individual and how to convince them with what sort of advert. And you knew that there would also be other people in their network who liked what they liked, so it could spread. The computer never stops learning, and it never stops monitoring. When told that this was creepy, Wigmore said, it is creepy, and that's why I am not on Facebook. Wigmore clarified that Cambridge Analytica were not paid. They did it as a favour because Mercer and Nigel Farage are good friends. The truth of this is disputed. The bottom line is people were manipulated by billionaires connected to UK and US military and used psyops via data mining on social media posts. Surveillance, data mining, manipulation, and fear. Who the hell are SCL and Cambridge Analytica? SCL first came to public attention in 2005 at the DSEI conference, the UK's largest showcase for military technology. SCL successfully demonstrated to the UK government how it could trick the general population into thinking a major disaster had taken place at a chemical plant. This would be done via a sophisticated set-up media campaign. From then on, SCL flourished. Board members include an array of lords, Tory donors, ex-British Army officers and defence contractors. This company sits at the very heart of the British establishment. SCL Group says on its website that it provides data analytics and strategy to governments and military organisations worldwide. The organisation boasts that it has conducted behavioural change programmes in over 60 countries. If that alone is not terrifying enough, its clients have included the British Ministry of Defence, the US State Department, and NATO. Government affiliation? A Freedom of Information request from August 2016 shows that the MOD has twice bought services from SCL in recent years. In 2011, the MOD paid £40,000 to SCL for the provision of external training. Meanwhile, in 2015, it paid SCL £150,000 for the procurement of target audience analysis. In addition, SCL also carries a secret clearance as a List X contractor for the MOD. A List X site is a commercial site on British soil that is approved to hold UK government information marked as confidential and above. Essentially, SCL got the green light to hold British government secrets on its premises. That should really start alarm bells ringing. The US State Department currently has a contract for $500,000 with SCL. According to an official, this was to provide research and analytical support in connection with our mission to counter terrorist propaganda and disinformation overseas. This was not the only work that SCL has been contracted for with the US government. In May 2015, SCL Defense, another subsidiary of the umbrella organization, received $1 million to support NATO operations in Eastern Europe targeting Russia. The company delivered a 3-month course in Riga which taught advanced counter-propaganda techniques designed to help member states assess and counter Russia's propaganda in Eastern Europe. The NATO website said that the revolutionary training would help Ukrainians better defend themselves against the Russian threat. What is clear is that all of SCL's activities were inextricably linked to its Cambridge Analytica arm. As recently as July 2017, the website for Cambridge Analytica said its methods have been approved by the UK Ministry of Defence, the US State Department, and NATO, and it carried all of these logos on its website. Political and military connections. Mark Turnbull heads up SCL Elections as well as Cambridge Analytica Political Global. His profile at the University of Exeter Strategy and Security Institute boasts of his record in achieving campaign success via measurable behavioural change in over 100 campaigns in Europe, North and South America, Asia, Africa and the Caribbean. Turnbull previously spent 18 years at Bell Pottinger, heading up the Pentagon-funded PR drive in occupied Iraq, which included the production of fake Al-Qaeda videos. Turnbull's involvement is just one sign of the sweeping links the company has with powerful Anglo-American political and military interests. The firm is headed up by Nigel Oakes, another old Etonian who, according to the website Powerbase, has links to the British Royals and was once rumoured to be an MI5 spy. In 1992, Oakes described his work in a trade journal as using the same techniques as Aristotle and Hitler. We appeal to people on an emotional level to get them to agree on a functional level. The president of SCL is Sir Geoffrey Patty, a former Conservative MP and the Defence Minister in Margaret Thatcher's government. Patty also co-founded Terrington Management, which lists BAE Systems and Lockheed Martin amongst its clients. One of the company's directors is wine millionaire and former British Special Forces officer in Borneo and Kenya, Roger Gabb, who in 2006 donated £500,000 to the Conservative Party. Gabb was also fined by the Electoral Commission for failing to include his name on an advert in a number of local newspapers that was arguing for a leave vote in the Brexit referendum. SCL's links to the Conservative Party continues to the company's chairman and venture capitalist Julian Wheatland. He also happens to be the chairman of Oxfordshire's Conservative Association. The organisation has also been funded by Jonathan Marland, who is the former Conservative Party treasurer, a trade envoy under David Cameron, and a close friend of Tory election strategist Lynton Crosby. Property tycoon and Conservative Party donor Vincent Chengui was also the single largest SCL shareholder for a decade. Meanwhile, another director is Gavin McNichol, founder of counter-terrorism Eden Intelligence firm, who ran a G8+ meeting of Financial Intelligence Corporation at the behest of the British government. Previous board members include Sir James Allen Mitchell, the former Prime Minister of the previously British colony St Vincent and the Grenadines. Mitchell has been a Privy Councillor on the Queen's Advisory Board since 1985. The British military and royal establishment links to SCL are further highlighted through another director, Rear Admiral John Tolhurst, a former Assistant Director of Naval Warfare in the Ministry of Defence and an aide-de-camp to the Queen. The Queen's third cousin, Lord Ivor Mountbatten, was also sitting on SCL's advisory board, but it is unclear if he still holds that role. Former Cambridge Analytica employee Brittany Kaiser also told the committee she had seen documents in which Nigel Oakes, the co-founder of the SCL Group and the head of its defence division, revealed that the company's audience targeting methodology was for several years export controlled by the British government. That would mean that the methodology was considered a weapon, she said. Weapons-grade communication tactics, which means we had to tell the British government if it was going to be deployed in another country outside the United Kingdom. Just to reiterate, SCL, the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, carries a secret clearance as a List X contractor for the MOD. A List X site is a commercial site on British soil that is approved to hold UK government information marked as confidential and above. Essentially, SCL got the green light to hold British government secrets on its premises. Former Cambridge Analytica employee Brittany Kaiser also told the committee that she'd seen documents in which Nigel Oates, the co-founder of the SCL Group and the head of its defence division, revealed the company's audience targeting methodology was for several years export controlled by the British government. That would mean that the methodology was considered a weapon, she said, weapons-grade communication tactics, which means we had to tell the British government if it was going to be deployed in another country outside the United Kingdom. Does this mean that members of the UK government would have to be consulted before the Brexit and Trump campaigns actually began? It certainly sounds that way, which means they, whoever they are, approved of this. Recent activity. In December 2016, Foreign Secretary and brain-damaged Labrador Boris Johnson met with Alexander Nix of Cambridge Analytica on the advice of the Foreign Office. He failed to disclose this meeting in the normal ways, failing to record it in any parliamentary logs and certainly failing to mention this to the public. The UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office asked SCL Group to help shape their foreign policy data strategy. This was revealed by Bella Caledonia magazine. As has been reported elsewhere, Mark Turnbull and David Wilkinson attended the FCO-run Diplomacy in the Information Age conference in February 2017. Networks, both diplomatic and social, understanding, developing, disrupting them. How are networks evolving beyond traditionally geographically centered relationships to align with interests and ideology? Knowledge, combing open source, proprietary, and privileged information to deliver powerful insights and deep understandings. Big data, finding the signal in the noise. Influence, how people get information and how people form opinions is changing. New phenomena are emerging. Post-truth, echo chambers and filter bubbles. What are the effective influence strategies that embrace these changes? Forecasting. How can data and data-driven decision-making help us anticipate issues and opportunities early and, where possible, take effective action to mitigate or to exploit these? That's what Boris Johnson was learning. A cover-up to save an asset of the government? Recently, Cambridge Analytica has gone into liquidation and its office is totally cleared. For those of you worried about Robert and Rebecca Mercer and Alexander Nixon, Julia Wheatland and others from Cambridge Analytica, there is good news. They have managed to set up another company which does exactly the same thing as Cambridge Analytica, but it's called Emerdata, and so is a completely different thing. It was under investigation, but unfortunately there was an enormous administrative cock-up, and the warrant to view Cambridge Analytica's office and past activities took well over a week to come through. In that week, members of the public photographed Cambridge Analytica's office being emptied and their computers being taken away. Just bad luck on the part of the Rozzers, no doubt. In conclusion, 1. There is a company called Cambridge Analytica that bypasses democracy and covertly influences elections all over the globe with a combination of social media, fake news, and military psychological warfare tactics, specifically creating artificial enemies to rally against. 2. They have connections to the MOD, British Military Intelligence, MI5, MI6, the US State Department, and the British establishment. The tactics used by SCL are considered a weapon and are under export control by the British government. 3. They use tactics alarmingly similar to established GCHQ programs like JTRIG and US military and intelligence operations designed to influence behavior, via social media and affect mood. 4. They are owned and or financed by mysterious far-right billionaires and millionaires that have a white supremacist ideology. They also finance several arms of alternative media and appear to be trying to normalize far-right propaganda by spreading it through the alternative media. 5. They are also connected to various data mining and monitoring companies that are part of the ever-expanding total information control grid. Some of the headlines that were admitted to be false and produced by Cambridge Analytica include: Muslim in Sweden gets 40 hours community service for raping girl 13. Law enforcement officials, medical professionals, there's something seriously wrong with Hillary Clinton's health. Germany having legalized Sharia law and approving child marriage. Evidence that Hillary is now confirmed to have Kuru disease from cannibalism. That WikiLeaks confirmed that Hillary sold weapons to ISIS, and that RuPaul claims that Trump touched him inappropriately in the 90s. Also that Donald Trump says that the earth is flat, or that the Pope was a Donald Trump supporter. All of these headlines turned out to be false.
Some dare call it conspiracy.